Welcome to another S&P 500 analysis. Today is October 24th, 2021. The S&P 500 made another all-time high last week, and that's have been forecasted by the emini S&P 500 future for quite a while, since it made a all-time high during the Globex hour back on September the 3rd. So now what is the ES S&P 500 future is telling us now? Before we go take a look at the emini S&P 500 future, and to see what it is telling us about the future of the S&P 500, first we're going to look at the S&P 500 cash index and along with the other major market indexes. And in addition to that, we'll also look at the market sentiment and the market internal and see what they are telling us. So stay tuned. Starting with this weekly chart of the S&P 500, as you can see last week, the range was 112 points. And also it gained 73.5 points of 1.64%. And notice that it has continued the one-time framing up, and also it closed above the 10-week moving average and also the 40-week moving average, and well within this price channel, and it is a little bit above the midpoint of this price channel. Now let's take a look at this sentiment chart here. As you can see, on Friday, the S&P 500 put in a new all-time high intraday. It did not close with an all-time closing high, but on Thursday, it did close with a new all-time closing high. And as you can see on the VIX index here, the VIX is sitting at 15.43, well below this 20 level. So obviously, the market participants are relatively complacent. And also, although the put-call ratio did come off the low somewhere around 0.48 and close on Friday at 0.597 and near 0.6, and still the market participants are putting on risks. And looking at the up-down volume ratio, it's certainly a little bit of a mixed bag. On Thursday, we have a negative up-down volume ratio, indicating that the down volume is more than the up volume. And it continued that way on Friday, but although the Friday, the S&P 500 did close with a loss, instead of Thursday, it was actually closed with a new all-time high. So that is a negative divergence. Similarly, on the AD, the advanced decline was actually negative. In other words, there were 196 more declining issue than advancing issue on Thursday, while the S&P 500 was closing at a new all-time high. But on Friday, we got a little bit of a positive divergence. The advancing issue led the declining issue by 53, and the S&P 500 closed with a negative 0.488, or lost almost 5 points. The new high, new low, still the new high outnumbered the new low. And on Friday, there were 182 more new high than new low. And looking at the New York Stock Exchange AD line, we are seeing a slight negative divergence, because if you notice on Thursday when the S&P 500 was making a new all-time closing high, the AD line actually went a little negative. Although Friday it came back up a bit, while the S&P 500 is pulling back, but still it is below this high here that was made on Wednesday. And for the NASDAQ market, the NASDAQ 100 closed down 134 points on Friday, but it did ended up with a positive up-down volume ratio, so there were more up volume than down volume. But the advanced decline, the decliner outnumbered the advancer by a margin of 604. Now, one thing positive about the NASDAQ is we are seeing a little bit of expansion on the new 52-week high, although on Friday the number of new 52-week low did come up a bit, but still the margin is in favor of the new 52-week high. You can see on Friday there were 64 more new 52-week high than 52-week low. But for the NASDAQ cumulative AD line, it's continued to show that negative divergence. So until that is get resolved, then we have to be continue to be cautious on the NASDAQ market. Now let's take a look at the S&P 500 daily chart here. Remember last week we were essentially looking for this maybe possibly come down and fill this gap or pull back a little bit before it pushes higher. And we also remind ourselves to look for this potential high to get taken out, because we did notice that there were this higher high, right? This higher high and higher low, and also took out this pivot and also took out this trend line here. So we basically were saying that once you get up above this, then this all-time high is back in play. So as you can see, on Thursday, did close with a new all-time closing high, and Friday put in another new all-time high. So right now we are continue to watch for further high, although we could see a little bit pullback and possibly get to this gap fill. But I believe that we might probably just see this little gap fill, and we probably will continue to push up for another new all-time high. But we'll talk about that a little bit more later on when we look at the emini S&P 500 and another indexes to see what they are telling us to confirm or contradict these possibilities. And for the NASDAQ 100, we're talking about pretty much the same as the S&P 500. We're looking at this higher high here once it got above this high, and also a higher low. And we'll also say once it get above this pivot here, we have essentially put this all-time high back in play. So right now it is getting up here, try to test this area for support. So we could see a little bit of a pullback once again to this 15,233, and if it holds, then we essentially another push up and take out this high here. And for the Russell 2000, we're saying that it needs to recapture this 2297, and it is still having a little tough time of actually holding above that, close above that, and with a little bit of a conviction. Then we say if we could get above this zone here, this consolidation zone, then yes, we could see a all-time high out of the Russell 2000. But if not, then we are essentially looking for this 2195 to get retested, and eventually 2134. So the Russell 2000 is still not getting, giving us a signal that it wants to go higher. And now looking at the Dow Jones Transportation. Remember last week we were talking about Dow Jones Transportation was really hopping. It or it reclaimed this 15,000 level with a gap up. And right now we're essentially looking at this, pushing above this 15,346, and now it's coming up to test this level here. So if it could get back above this pivot, then we essentially could look for the Dow Jones Transportation to make another all-time high. So if it pull back, we could see this 15,346 as a potential retest level here, or test for support. And you can see that there are a lot of tests on this level here. And for the Dow Jones Industrial, remember last week we were saying that came back above this 35,150, and this all-time high is pretty much in play. And as you can see right now, last week the Dow Jones Industrial made a new all-time high. I wouldn't be surprised that get a little bit of a pullback and then push. And the next potential target that we're looking at is somewhere around 36,438, and that is a major move of this consolidation range here on the upside. So that's basically what we're looking at right now. But again, there is this round number of 36,000. You sort of kind of pay attention to as a psychological resistance level. And here looking at this composite, New York Stock Exchange Composite Index. This is a broad market index. Remember we were saying that it was only 30 points away from the all-time high last week. And as you can see, it just surged above, and right now it took out that old all-time high. And this right here is kind of a little bit of an indication that we should not be surprised to see S&P 500 to come up and make another new all-time high, because I have never seen the market top out with the New York Stock Exchange Composite putting a new high. Now let's quickly review the 10-year yield, the dollar, the oil, gold, and silver market before we go and take a look at the E-mini S&P 500 and see what it is telling us. And looking at this 10-year yield, remember we're talking about this 1.7 level, and we're still keeping an eye on this 1.7. And when it get up to this 1.765, I think that's when we will probably pay more attention to some substantial market movement on the downside. Okay, so right now it is still trying to test this 1.7. So I'll look for a little bit of a chop here, and then eventually push up to the 17 or the 1.765 on the 10-year yield. And looking at the US dollar, remember we're saying that it has to hold above this 94.08, and we might see it to push up to this 95.7. If it come back down inside of this zone, then we probably, the first level we're going to watch is the trend line here, and that would be somewhere around this 93.50 area here. So that's basically we've been sort of kind of testing that level now. So we'll see, would it be able to come further down and possibly test the 93? And if break below the 93, then we're probably looking at the 92 area. And for the crude oil last week, we are looking at the weekly chart here to get the next potential upper target level, and we're essentially saying it will be close to about 85. And last Friday it came up to close at 83.87. So don't be surprised to see continue to push higher and get above the 85 and possibly get into this area here, just slightly above 90. Then maybe we see a little bit of a pullback down and retest this $77 level. And for the silver market, we did see silver got a little bit of a bounce, after broke above this trend line here. But it did also encounter some resistance here at the 24.71. So we'll see, would it be able to get above that level and work toward this 26.67? But if it doesn't, I expect it to come back down and retest this 22.72 area. And for gold, as you can see, it came back up and tried to reclaim this 1804 once again. And once again, it got pushed back. Now, although I did not buy into this inverted head and shoulder, because I was saying this right shoulder here is a little bit, pulled back a little bit too deep. But that doesn't mean that the other market participant agrees with me, right? So it could still come up and break this neckline and push through and break this trend line here. Then it looked like a inverted head and shoulder breakout. And it could, get up to this 1846 and then maybe come back in and once again test this 1804 again. But if it is unable to come up and break this inverted head and shoulder neckline and start coming back down, because I'm still looking at a retest of these levels here, 1716 and 1677. Now let's take a look at the SPY, the ETF for the S&P 500 before we take a look at the E-mini S&P 500 future. As you can see on Friday, we got this little bit of a tweezer top type of a pattern, but we are seeing a little bit of a volume cutoff. So there could be a little bit of a buyer cutoff. But again, we're going to take a look at the E-mini S&P 500 and see what that is telling us. But so far right now, we could see a pullback based on this little bit of a price action here and possibly get back into this value area high, this composite value area high, and maybe, work down and test this gap, fill this gap here and possibly fill this gap near this 448 area. So keep an eye on that downside, but if it pushes up, continue to push up, then look for a new all-time high. Okay, so right now the volume profile seems to indicate that there is a little bit of a buyer cutoff. Now let's take a look at the E-mini S&P 500 volume profile chart here. Right here I got the composite, and also I have the weekly profile and the weekly rewrap. And as you can see, last week, the prices pretty much stay above the VWAP. And right now, it's appear to be trying to establish value here. It's kind of got this new balance area. And here is that all-time high, that new all-time high that was printed on Friday. So what we're going to watch for is, will this price come up and take out this all-time high in the coming week? Or will it come back down and fill this gap here, right, before it pushes back up and take out this high? Now, one of the reasons why we are expecting this high to be taken out is, or when we take a look at the market profile, I will show you the reason why, right? And the other thing is, this gap is only one possibility on a pullback, but there is also another gap here that appear to be, also in confluence with this near this high volume node, at this 4440 area, okay? But right now we're essentially looking at this 4480 area. Now let's go switch over and take a look at the market profile. Now the first thing that we notice on this market profile for the ES, the E-mini SP500, is the poor high that was printed on Friday, October 22nd. So that poor high eventually has to be taken out, or in other words, be resolved by pushing the price above this level. And that could lead the S&P 500 to another new all-time high. Now, there's a couple scenarios that we could keep an eye out on how this new high get resolved. The first one is, in the coming days, that the E-mini S&P 500 will essentially just push up and take out this poor high and put in a new all-time high before it start pulling back. The other thing is that it could put off resolving this poor high until after it come down and resolve some of these levels here, such as the poor low put in by the a couple of days ago last week at this 4514.5, and also some of these point of control that hasn't been tagged yet, and also could come down and tag those point of control in addition to this single print area. And that, if it come down to do this, take out the single print and also October 18's point of control, then it will essentially come down and fill this 4480 gap. Right now, if it continue to move down and fill this the single print down here, and also take out the poor high from October 14, then again it will essentially fill this gap below the 4440. So those are a couple different scenarios on the downside before it start pushing back up and resolve this poor high and pushes the S&P 500 to a new all-time high. So I hope you find this video informative. Be sure to smash that thumbs up to help me share and promote this video. Thank you for watching and stay safe.